people who think money buys respect. There are people who think power means they can humiliate anyone. And then there are people who stay silent because they know exactly what they're capable of. When a wealthy CEO slapped a struggling single father inside a crowded diner, everyone thought they had just witnessed another rich woman bullying a poor man. Even her bodyguard thought so, until he noticed the faded tattoo on the man's forearm. In that instant, his face turned pale because he knew that tattoo belonged to a legend nobody in his profession ever wanted to meet. Before we continue, if you enjoy stories where ordinary people hide extraordinary pasts, make sure you subscribe. Every story is written to keep you guessing until the very end. Now, let's begin. The slap echoed across the diner. Coffee cups stopped halfway to people's mouths. Forks froze above half-eaten breakfasts. Even the cook looked through the kitchen window. Nobody spoke. Keanu Reeves slowly turned his head. His cheek stung, not because she'd hit him particularly hard, because she'd done it in front of his daughter. 8-year-old Lily stood beside booth 7. One hand clutched a small pink backpack. The other held her father's worn jacket. Her eyes had filled with tears. "Dad," she barely whispered it. Keanu didn't touch his face. He didn't glare. He didn't clench his fists. Instead, he looked at Lily, smiled gently. "It's okay." His voice remained calm. So calm, it almost felt out of place. The woman who had slapped him laughed. Expensive red dress, diamond earrings, designer heels. Everything about her screamed money. She folded her arms. "No, it's not okay." She leaned closer. "You bumped into me." Keanu looked down. A few drops of coffee stained the sleeve of her coat. "I'm sorry. I wasn't looking where I was going." She laughed again. "Lucky for you." She glanced around the diner. "I'm in a good mood." Several customers exchanged uncomfortable looks. Nobody wanted to get involved. Everyone in town knew who she was. Victoria Harrington, Chief Executive Officer of Harrington Global, one of the richest women in the state. Behind her stood a massive man in a black suit, over 6'4", broad shoulders, earpiece, professional posture. He hadn't spoken once. His eyes quietly scanned every corner of the diner. Interesting, Keanu noticed immediately. Not just a bodyguard, former military. Victoria pointed toward Keanu's faded jeans. You couldn't even afford to replace those. More laughter, not from everyone, only from the 2 executives sitting with her. One man smirked into his coffee. Another shook his head. Some people never learn their place. Lily stepped closer to her father. He said sorry. Victoria looked down at the little girl, then smiled. A cold smile. "Sweetheart." She reached into her handbag, pulled out a crisp $100 bill, held it between 2 fingers. "This should help." She let it fall. The bill floated gently to the floor, landing beside Keanu's worn boots. Nobody moved. The diner suddenly felt much smaller. Keanu looked at the money, then quietly bent down, not to pick it up, to lift Lily's backpack that had slipped onto the floor. He handed it back to her. "There you go." The $100 bill remained exactly where it had landed. Victoria frowned. You didn't hear me. Keanu looked at her. I did. Then pick it up. No. Her smile disappeared. What did you say? I said no. Silence. We're finished here. He gently took Lily's hand. Come on. We've got school. They started walking toward the exit. Victoria couldn't believe it. Nobody walked away from her. Stop. Keanu didn't. I said stop. Still, he kept walking. Victoria looked at her bodyguard. Make him listen. The bodyguard hesitated. Only slightly. Interesting. Keanu noticed that too. The man wasn't eager. He was calculating. The bodyguard walked over. He didn't grab Keanu, didn't push him. Instead, he stepped in front of him. Sir, his voice was respectful. My employer would like another word. Keanu looked into his eyes. No. The bodyguard blinked. No. My daughter has class. We're leaving. The bodyguard studied him carefully. Interesting. No fear. No anger. No ego. Just certainty. People who'd spent years around violence recognized it immediately. Victoria stormed across the diner. I've never been ignored in my life. Keanu sighed quietly. There's a first time for everything. Several customers struggled to hide smiles. Victoria noticed. Her face turned crimson. You think you're funny? No. You think you're brave? No. She stepped even closer. Then what exactly are you? Keanu looked at Lily, then back at Victoria. A father trying to get breakfast before taking his daughter to school. Victoria laughed loudly. A father. She looked around the diner. Does this look like a man capable of taking care of anyone? One of the executives joined in. Probably can't even pay the bill. The waitress finally spoke. He already paid. Everyone turned toward her. The elderly waitress stood behind the counter. He paid before the food came. Victoria dismissed her with a wave. I'm not talking to you. The waitress folded her arms. No, you've been talking long enough. Interesting. The entire diner looked at her. It wasn't courage. It was frustration. Victoria stepped toward the counter. Do you know who I am? The waitress smiled. I know exactly who you are. Good. And I know people with money often forget. She looked toward Keanu. That dignity isn't something you can buy. The diner fell silent again. Victoria's jaw tightened. You're fired. The waitress laughed. I don't work for you. A few customers couldn't hold it anymore. Soft chuckles spread through the diner. Victoria looked furious. She pointed toward Keanu again. This, she struggled for words. Poor nobody. Has everyone forgetting who's in charge? Keanu quietly picked up Lily's backpack. Ready? She nodded. They walked toward the door again. This time, Victoria grabbed his shoulder. Hard. You're not leaving until you apologize. Keanu slowly looked down at her hand, then calmly removed it. Not aggressively, just enough. His sleeve pulled back slightly, barely 2 inches. The bodyguard's eyes followed the movement automatically. Interesting. A faded black tattoo appeared on Keanu's forearm, almost invisible, worn by time. Most people would have missed it. The bodyguard didn't. His eyes widened, just slightly. Interesting. not because of the tattoo itself, because of what it represented. A phoenix wrapped around a Roman numeral, XIII. His breathing slowed. No, that couldn't be right. Victoria never noticed. She stepped forward again. I'm talking to you. Keanu calmly rolled his sleeve back down, covering the tattoo completely. The bodyguard couldn't stop staring. His military instincts screamed that he'd seen that symbol before, years ago, during a classified security briefing. He just couldn't remember where. Victoria looked at her bodyguard. Throw him out. The man didn't move. I said, throw him out. Still, he remained frozen. His eyes stayed locked on Keanu, trying desperately to remember. Then, it hit him. His face lost all color. He whispered so quietly, only he could hear it. Phoenix Unit. His heart skipped a beat. Impossible. That tattoo had appeared only once during his military career. Not in public, not in newspapers. Inside a classified intelligence briefing. One faded photograph. One warning. One sentence. If you ever encounter this symbol, do not engage alone. Marcus. Victoria's voice snapped him back. I'm waiting. Marcus didn't answer. His eyes never left Keanu. Interesting. The man wasn't pretending to be calm. He simply was. Victoria frowned. What is wrong with you? Marcus slowly stepped closer to Keanu. Not aggressively, carefully, like someone approaching a sleeping lion. Sir, his voice had completely changed. Respectful, measured. I need to ask you something. Keanu looked at him. You can ask. Were you? Marcus hesitated. Ever attached to Phoenix Unit? The entire diner remained silent. Nobody understood the question. Keanu looked at Marcus for several seconds, then quietly answered, I don't talk about my past. Marcus swallowed. That wasn't a denial. Victoria laughed. Oh, for heaven's sake. He's a construction worker. She looked at Keanu's rough hands. Or maybe a mechanic. You seriously believe this man was some kind of soldier? Marcus didn't even look at her. Interesting. He was remembering. Years earlier, an instructor had stood before a room full of military contractors. A faded image appeared on the projector. A black phoenix wrapped around the Roman numeral XIII. The instructor's voice echoed through the room. Phoenix Unit didn't protect politicians. They protected the country from problems the country couldn't admit existed. Another slide appeared. No names, only silhouettes. Most members officially never existed. Marcus slowly looked back at Keanu. The faded tattoo, the calm eyes, the controlled breathing. Interesting. Everything matched. Victoria snapped her fingers. Marcus, finally, he turned toward her. Ma'am, I think we should leave. The diner became completely silent. Victoria stared at him. What? I said, we should leave. She laughed. Because of him. Marcus answered honestly. I don't know who he is. Silence. But I know that tattoo. Victoria folded her arms. So, Marcus lowered his voice. I've never seen it on anyone who wasn't considered extremely dangerous. One of the executives burst into laughter. Dangerous? He pointed toward Keanu. This guy, he can barely afford breakfast. Several customers rolled their eyes. The waitress quietly muttered, "Some people never learn." Victoria stepped closer to Marcus. "I don't pay you to be scared." Marcus remained calm. "I'm not scared. No, I'm being careful." Victoria shook her head in disbelief. "You're telling me you're afraid of a poor single father?" Marcus answered immediately. "No, I'm afraid." He looked at Keanu, of making a decision without knowing who he really is. Interesting. Keanu noticed something. Marcus wasn't protecting Victoria anymore. He was trying to protect everyone else. Lily gently tugged her father's sleeve. "Dad, can we go now?" Keanu smiled warmly. "Almost." Victoria sighed dramatically. "Fine." She walked to the table, picked up her designer handbag, then deliberately emptied its contents onto the floor. Lipstick, keys, wallet, phone, everything scattered across the tiles. She pointed directly at Keanu. "There, you stole my watch." The entire diner gasped. Keanu looked at her calmly. "I did not." "Oh, really?" She looked around dramatically. "Then where is it?" One executive immediately joined in. "I saw him standing near you." Another nodded. "So did I." "Interesting. Too fast. Far too rehearsed." The waitress frowned. "That's a lie." Victoria ignored her. She looked toward Marcus. "Search him." Marcus didn't move. "Ma'am, I don't think." "I wasn't asking." Marcus quietly looked at Keanu. "I'm sorry." Keanu nodded. "I know." Marcus stepped forward. "If you allow me." Keanu slowly raised his hands. "Go ahead." The entire diner watched. Marcus searched Keanu's jacket. Empty. His pockets. Nothing. Wallet. $23. A folded grocery list. Lily's school permission slip. No watch. Marcus stepped back. "He doesn't have it." Victoria frowned. "Search the backpack." Lily hugged it tightly. "No." Victoria pointed at the child. "See, she's hiding it." Tears filled Lily's eyes. "I didn't take anything." Keanu quietly knelt beside his daughter. "It's okay." He looked into her eyes. "Nobody's opening your backpack." Marcus immediately agreed. "I won't search a child." Victoria glared at him. "You'll do what I pay you to do." Marcus shook his head. "No." The executives looked stunned. "You work for her." Marcus answered calmly. "I protect her." Silence. "I don't intimidate children." Victoria's face burned with anger. "You're fired." Marcus nodded once. "I understand." He removed the earpiece from his ear, placed it on the table, then quietly took off his black suit jacket, folded it neatly, set it beside the earpiece. The diner watched in complete silence. Victoria laughed. "You're quitting." "Because of him." Marcus looked at Keanu. "No." He turned back to Victoria. "I'm quitting because of you." Interesting. Keanu didn't smile, but he respected the decision. Victoria looked around the diner. "Fine. I'll call the police." Keanu nodded. "Please do." "I will. They can check the security cameras." Victoria's confidence faltered. Only for a second. Interesting. Keanu saw it immediately. He quietly glanced toward the ceiling. 3 cameras, one covering the entrance, one covering the cash register, one directly above Victoria's table. Interesting. Perfect angle. Keanu looked back at Victoria. You never lost your watch. She laughed nervously. I think I know what I own. No, you know what you planned. Silence. You took it off. He pointed toward her oversized handbag, lying open on the floor. Before you ever walked over to me. The entire diner turned toward the handbag. Victoria's smile disappeared. Keanu continued calmly. You dropped your purse, hoping everyone would watch the items fall, so nobody would notice. The watch was never among them. Nobody said a word. Keanu looked at Marcus. The cameras will prove it. Marcus slowly turned toward the security monitor behind the counter, then back toward Victoria. His voice was barely above a whisper. Ma'am, where is your watch? The diner became silent. Victoria stared at him. For the first time since walking inside, she didn't have an answer. Only anger. She recovered quickly. I don't have to explain myself. Marcus nodded. No, but the cameras will. One of the executives stepped forward. This is ridiculous. He looked toward the diner manager. Turn those cameras off. The manager frowned. I can't. Why not? They're backed up directly to the cloud. Interesting. Keanu noticed Victoria's eyes. They flickered, just for a moment, toward the exit, not the cameras. The exit. She wanted to leave. That meant she already knew what the footage would show. Keanu quietly looked at Lily. Sweetheart. She looked up. Yes, Dad. Go sit with Mrs. Parker. He nodded toward the elderly waitress. I'll be there in a minute. Lily hesitated, then nodded. Mrs. Parker smiled warmly. Come on, sweetheart. She led Lily behind the counter, away from the growing confrontation. Victoria watched the little girl leave, then looked back at Keanu. You think you've won? Keanu shook his head. I wasn't trying to win. Silence. I was trying to eat breakfast. Several customers smiled. The manager hurried into the small office beside the kitchen. Seconds later, the security footage appeared on the monitor above the counter. Everyone looked up. The video replayed. Victoria entering the diner. Her executives behind her. Marcus following several steps back. Then, interesting, before she ever walked toward Keanu, she quietly removed her diamond watch, slipped it into a hidden zippered pocket inside her handbag, then closed it, exactly as Keanu had said. Nobody spoke. The footage continued. Victoria deliberately bumped into Keanu. Her coffee spilled. The slap, the $100 bill, everything, exactly as it had happened. The recording ended. Silence, heavy silence. One customer finally muttered. She set him up. Another shook his head, all because he bumped into her. An elderly man quietly added, he didn't even bump into her. Marcus closed his eyes. Interesting. He'd hoped he was wrong. He wasn't. Victoria looked around the diner. Nobody stood with her anymore. Not her executives. Not her bodyguard. Not even the customers who'd stayed silent before. She forced a laugh. It was a misunderstanding, Keanu answered calmly. No, it was humiliation. She pointed at him. You think anyone's going to believe some broke, single father over me? Before anyone could answer, Mrs. Parker spoke from behind the counter. They already have. Several customers nodded, one after another, not dramatically, quietly, naturally, because they'd seen everything. Victoria's executives exchanged nervous looks. One leaned toward her. Victoria, I think we should go. She glared at him. You too. He lowered his voice. The cameras, the witnesses, this could become a problem. Interesting. He wasn't worried about right or wrong. He was worried about public relations. Victoria grabbed her handbag. This isn't over. She started toward the door. Marcus stepped into her path. Not aggressively, just enough. She frowned. What now? Marcus held out his hand. The company security badge. Victoria stared at him. What? The badge. You fired me. I know. So, I'd rather leave it here than ever wear it again. She laughed bitterly. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. Marcus calmly unclipped the badge from his belt, placed it on the nearest table. No, he looked at Keanu. I almost did. Victoria shoved past him. The executives hurried after her. As she reached the entrance, a little voice stopped her. Excuse me. Everyone turned. Lily stood beside Mrs. Parker, holding something small in her hand. Victoria frowned. What? Lily walked forward. She opened her tiny hand. Inside lay the diamond watch. The entire diner froze. Victoria's face turned pale. Marcus looked genuinely confused. How? Lily pointed toward Victoria's handbag. It fell out. When you picked it up. Mrs. Parker nodded. She found it under your chair. Silence. She asked me if it belonged to the lady. Keanu smiled softly. Interesting. Lily hadn't understood what the watch meant. She'd simply tried to return it. Victoria slowly took the watch. She couldn't even look at anyone. Her humiliation was complete. As she turned to leave, Marcus quietly spoke. Ma'am. She stopped, without turning around. I've worked executive protection for 14 years. Silence. I've stood between my clients and bullets. Another pause. I've never been ashamed. Until today. Victoria didn't answer. She walked out of the diner. The executives followed. The front door closed behind them. The room remained silent for several seconds. Then, people slowly returned to their meals. Conversations resumed. Coffee was poured again. Life returned to normal. Almost. Marcus picked up his folded jacket, looked at Keanu. I owe you an apology. Keanu shook his head. You don't. I stood there. You also stopped. Marcus smiled faintly. Not soon enough. Keanu extended his hand. Marcus shook it. His eyes drifted toward Keanu's sleeve again. The tattoo. Keanu looked down. What about it? Marcus hesitated. I was told everyone from Phoenix Unit was dead. Keanu's expression remained unreadable. Most of us are. Marcus frowned. Then why leave? Keanu looked toward Lily, who was laughing with Mrs. Parker while finishing her pancakes. His voice softened. Because she deserves a father, more than the world deserves another soldier. Marcus nodded slowly. He understood. Then, his phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen. His expression changed instantly. Interesting. The caller ID read, HARRINGTON Global, Private Security Command. Marcus almost ignored it. Then, a text message appeared beneath the missed call. Do not let HIM leave. Keep Keanureeves inside the diner. Our team is 3 minutes away. Marcus looked up sharply at Keanu. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. They're not coming back for revenge. He looked toward the parking lot, where 3 black SUVs had just turned into the diner. They're coming because someone else recognized your tattoo. Keanu didn't look outside. He looked at Marcus. How long? Marcus checked the convoy. Less than 2 minutes. Mrs. Parker noticed the tension immediately. What's wrong? Keanu smiled at her. Would you do me a favor? Anything. He looked toward Lily. Keep her in the kitchen. Mrs. Parker didn't ask questions. She simply nodded. Come on, sweetheart. Lily looked worried. Dad, I'll be right here. You promise? Keanu smiled. I promise. She disappeared through the kitchen doors with Mrs. Parker. Marcus watched him. You knew she'd ask that. Keanu nodded. Children always know when adults are lying. Outside, the 3 black SUVs parked in perfect formation. Not crooked, not hurried, precise, interesting, professional drivers. 4 men climbed out. Dark suits, earpieces, polished shoes, no visible weapons. They didn't need to display them. Everything about their posture screamed training. The last person to exit was an older gentleman, mid-60s, silver hair, tailored charcoal suit, black leather gloves. He carried no phone, no briefcase, nothing interesting. That made him the most dangerous person in the group. Marcus's breathing slowed. Oh no. Keanu looked at him. You know him? Marcus nodded once. I've never met him. Silence. But everyone in executive protection knows who he is. The diner door opened. A tiny bell chimed overhead. The older man entered first. The room instantly became quiet again. Not because anyone recognized him, because he carried himself like someone accustomed to absolute authority. His eyes swept across the diner. They landed on Keanu. He smiled. So, it's really you. Keanu studied him. I don't believe we've met. The man nodded. No, but I've spent 15 years hoping we never would. Interesting. Marcus noticed something impossible. The older man was nervous, very nervous. One of the suited men stepped forward. Sir, the older gentleman raised one finger. The man immediately fell silent. Interesting. One gesture, complete obedience. The gentleman slowly approached booth 7, stopped a few feet away. Then, to everyone's surprise, he extended his hand. My name is Richard Sterling. Keanu looked at the offered hand, then shook it once. Keanu, I know. Victoria suddenly stormed back into the diner. Her executives hurried behind her. She froze. Mr. Sterling, the older man didn't even turn around. Interesting. She wasn't expecting him. Victoria smiled nervously. I didn't know you were coming. Richard finally looked at her. His expression remained calm. I wasn't. Silence. I came because my security office called me. Victoria frowned. What? Marcus quietly spoke. I reported the tattoo. Victoria looked horrified. You did what? Marcus didn't answer. Richard looked back at Keanu. Would you mind rolling up your sleeve? The diner held its breath. Keanu remained still. Why? Richard answered honestly. I'd rather not make a mistake. After several long seconds, Keanu slowly rolled his sleeve upward. The faded black phoenix appeared once more, wrapped around the Roman numeral XIII. Richard closed his eyes, only for a moment, then exhaled. It's real. Victoria looked confused. What is everybody talking about? Richard slowly turned toward her. His voice remained calm. Do you know why your company still exists? She frowned. What kind of question is that? A simple one. I built it. I know. No. He shook his head. You inherited it. Silence. I built it. Nobody in the diner spoke. Richard continued. 23 years ago, our headquarters was taken over. Victoria looked puzzled. I've heard the story. No, you heard the press release. Another pause. The truth never reached the newspapers. He looked directly at Keanu. There were 12 hostages, 3 children, 1 pregnant employee. No police officer could get inside. The diner remained silent, so the government sent someone who officially didn't exist. Marcus already knew the answer. Victoria didn't. Richard smiled faintly. They sent Phoenix Unit. He looked toward Keanu. 1 man entered that building. Silence. 22 minutes later, every hostage walked out alive. Another pause. Not 1 criminal survived. Victoria slowly looked at Keanu, then laughed awkwardly. This, she pointed at him. This man. Richard's eyes hardened. This man gave me 23 more years with my wife. Silence. My grandson exists because my daughter walked out of that building alive. Nobody in the diner moved. Mrs. Parker quietly peeked from the kitchen. Even she stopped. Victoria swallowed. She looked between Richard and Keanu. I didn't know. Richard nodded. I know. Silence. That's why ignorance is never an excuse. Keanu finally spoke. It was a long time ago. Richard smiled. For you. He looked down briefly. For my family. It was yesterday. Interesting. Keanu shifted his weight. Marcus noticed. Not discomfort. Embarrassment. He didn't like praise. Richard reached into his inside pocket, pulled out a small velvet box. He placed it gently on the table. I've carried this for 17 years. Keanu frowned. What is it? A debt. Before Keanu could answer, one of Richard's security men suddenly pressed 2 fingers against his earpiece. His expression changed instantly. Sir, Richard looked at him. What? The guard lowered his voice. We've got a problem. What kind? The guard looked directly at Keanu. We intercepted a message. Silence. It wasn't Harrington Global. that recognized the tattoo. The diner suddenly felt cold. Richard frowned. "Who did?" The guard answered quietly. "The People Phoenix unit was created to stop." Keanu's expression changed for the first time that morning. Not fear, recognition. He whispered, "I thought they were all dead." The guard slowly shook his head. "They're not." He looked through the front window. "And they're already here." Outside, a black delivery van had silently parked across the street. Nobody had seen it arrive. The side door slowly slid open. 5 men stepped out. Each one carried the same tattoo, a black serpent wrapped around the Roman numeral XIV. The entire diner fell silent. Marcus stared through the window. "What is XIV?" Richard Sterling answered before Keanu could. "The unit that hunted Phoenix." The words hung in the air. Victoria frowned. "I don't understand." Richard looked at her. "That's because you were never supposed to." Keanu quietly rolled his sleeve back down. His expression became unreadable again. "Interesting." Marcus noticed something. The moment Keanu covered the tattoo, he became someone else. His breathing slowed. His shoulders relaxed. His eyes began studying reflections in the diner windows instead of looking directly outside. Not scared, preparing, Richard stepped closer. "They found you." Keanu nodded once. "I can see that. They won't stop." "I know." Victoria looked from one man to another. "What is everybody talking about?" Nobody answered her, because outside, the 5 men weren't rushing the diner. They weren't reaching for weapons. They simply stood there, watching, interesting, professionals. One of them looked at his watch. Another adjusted his gloves. The tallest quietly nodded toward the diner entrance, almost like they were waiting for permission. Marcus frowned. "Why aren't they moving?" Keanu answered calmly. "They're confirming." "Confirming what?" "That it's really me." Richard's face tightened. "We have to get you out." Keanu shook his head. "No, you can't stay." "I have to." Richard looked confused. "Why?" Keanu glanced toward the kitchen. "My daughter." Interesting. Marcus hadn't even thought about Lily. Keanu had never stopped thinking about her. Richard turned toward 2 of his security men. "Take the child out the back." Keanu immediately stopped him. "No." Richard frowned. "They'll protect her. They'll make her a target." Silence. Nobody moves. Marcus looked at Keanu. "So what's the plan?" Keanu smiled faintly. "There isn't one." "What?" "There doesn't need to be." Victoria finally snapped. "This is insane." She grabbed her purse. "I'm leaving." Marcus stepped directly into her path. "No." She glared at him. "You don't work for me anymore." "No, I don't. But if you walk outside," he looked through the window, "you'll die before you reach your car." She laughed nervously. "You're exaggerating." Keanu quietly spoke. "No, I'm not." The confidence in his voice made everyone stop talking. Outside, the tallest man finally started walking, not toward the front door, toward the diner window. He stopped directly outside booth 7, exactly where Keanu had been sitting. Interesting. He knew where to stand. The man slowly raised one finger, then tapped the glass once. Tap. Not hard, just enough. Keanu didn't react. The man smiled. Then, with one finger, he slowly traced the outline of a phoenix on the fogged-up glass. Before wiping it away, Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. They know. Keanu nodded. They've always known. The front door opened, not because the men forced it. One elderly customer stood up. I've had enough of this. I'm going home. Keanu looked at him. Sir, the old man smiled. I appreciate the concern, but nobody tells me when I can leave. He reached for the door. Keanu moved. Not fast, not violently. He simply placed one hand on the old man's shoulder. I wouldn't. The old man looked into Keanu's eyes. Something in them made him stop. Without another word, he quietly returned to his seat. Interesting. Keanu hadn't convinced him with fear. He'd convinced him with certainty. Outside, the tallest man smiled again, then stepped away from the window. He reached into his jacket. Marcus immediately tensed. Weapon. Instead, the man removed a folded photograph. He pressed it against the glass, facing inward. Keanu looked at it. His expression changed, only slightly, but Richard saw it. What is it? Keanu didn't answer immediately. He walked to the window, looked closer. The photograph was old, faded. It showed 13 people standing together, all wearing black tactical uniforms. Phoenix unit. Every face had a red X painted across it. Every face, except one, Keanu's. Across the bottom, someone had handwritten 4 words. Last one left. Marcus looked at the photo. They've been hunting your team. Keanu quietly nodded. For years. The man outside smiled, then flipped the photograph over. A second message was written on the back. This one, fresh, in black ink. Your daughter is next. The room instantly became silent. Richard slowly closed his eyes. Marcus clenched his fists. Victoria covered her mouth. Mrs. Parker instinctively pulled Lily farther into the kitchen. Keanu stared at the words for several long seconds. Then, something happened that nobody in the diner expected. He smiled, not warmly, not kindly. It was the first genuine smile anyone had seen from him all morning. Interesting. Marcus suddenly understood. The men outside thought they'd frightened him. They hadn't. They'd crossed a line. Keanu quietly turned away from the window, walked toward Lily, knelt in front of her. She looked worried. Dad, are those bad people? Keanu gently brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. They made one mistake. What? They thought threatening you. He smiled softly. Would make me afraid. She wrapped her arms around his neck. I am afraid. Keanu hugged her tightly. I know. He stood, looked at Richard, then at Marcus. His calm voice echoed through the silent diner. Would you both do me a favor? Richard nodded immediately. Anything. Marcus did the same. What do you need? Keanu looked toward the kitchen. Keep Lily safe. Richard frowned. And you? Keanu slowly took off his worn denim jacket, folded it carefully, placed it on the booth beside his daughter's backpack, then rolled up both sleeves. The faded Phoenix XII tattoo was no longer hidden. He looked toward the men waiting outside. They've spent 20 years looking for me. A long pause. I think. He walked toward the diner door. It's time I stopped making them wait. Marcus immediately stepped beside him. I'm coming with you. Keanu looked at him. No, I'm trained. I know. I can help. Keanu smiled faintly. You already have. Marcus frowned. How? You believed the truth, when it would have been easier to believe the lie. Richard Sterling spoke next. My security team can hold them. Keanu shook his head. No. Richard looked confused. There are only 5. Keanu quietly looked through the glass. No, there are 5 that want us to see them. Interesting. Marcus immediately scanned the parking lot again. His stomach tightened. Keanu was right. The 5 men outside never once looked around. They already knew the perimeter was covered. Marcus whispered, How many? Keanu answered without taking his eyes off the window. If they're using XIV tactics, between 12 and 15. Richard's face grew serious. We only counted 5. Because, Keanu replied calmly, the others are already in position. Almost on cue, a sharp metallic sound echoed from the roof. Clang, then another. Marcus slowly looked upward. Interesting. Weight shifting. Someone was walking across the roof. Mrs. Parker looked terrified. There's someone up there. Keanu nodded. Probably 2. Victoria's confidence had completely disappeared. She clutched her purse with trembling hands. This is because of me. Nobody answered, because everyone already knew. Keanu turned toward her. No, she looked up. They would have found me eventually. Silence. You only changed the day. Victoria lowered her eyes. I'm sorry. Keanu studied her for a second, then nodded. I know. It wasn't forgiveness. It was acceptance. Outside, the tallest man checked his watch. Exactly 6 minutes had passed. He spoke into a small microphone, clipped beneath his collar. Confirmation complete. Interesting. He wasn't talking to the men outside. He was talking to someone else. A voice answered through Marcus's abandoned earpiece lying on the table. Everyone heard it. Calm, older, confident. Proceed. The 5 men outside immediately spread apart, not charging, creating firing angles. Interesting. They expected resistance. Marcus quietly reached beneath the counter. The elderly manager frowned. What are you looking for? A first aid kit. The manager blinked. A first aid kit. Marcus nodded. If this goes badly, we'll need one. Keanu almost smiled, still thinking about saving lives. Good. Richard looked at his remaining security detail. Positions. His men moved instantly. One covered the front entrance. One moved toward the rear hallway. Another stood beside the kitchen door. Professional, efficient. Keanu quietly walked through the diner. Interesting. He wasn't looking for cover. He was counting. Booths, windows, distance to the kitchen, distance to Lily, distance to every civilian. Marcus noticed. He isn't planning how to fight. Richard nodded slowly. He's planning how to protect. The front door suddenly opened. Everyone tensed. But it wasn't one of the men from outside. It was a teenage delivery driver, holding 3 pizza boxes. He looked around, confused. Large pepperoni for... Keanu moved instantly, not toward the attackers, toward the teenager. He grabbed the young man by the shoulder, pulled him behind the counter. At that exact second, a suppressed bullet shattered the front window. Glass exploded across the empty space where the teenager had just been standing. The pizza boxes flew through the air. The young driver stared at Keanu in shock. You just... Keanu calmly answered. They weren't aiming at me. The teenager frowned. What? They were aiming at you. Silence. Marcus looked toward the shattered window. Interesting. The sniper hadn't fired to kill. He'd fired to see if Keanu would react. Outside, the tallest man lowered his suppressed rifle. He smiled. He still protects strangers. A second voice answered through his earpiece. Good. That confirms it's him. Richard looked horrified. They used that kid as bait. Keanu quietly nodded. They've always done that. The teenager's hands trembled. I almost died. Keanu placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. But you didn't. The young man looked at him. How did you know? Keanu smiled faintly. They don't study their targets. They study their habits. Interesting. Marcus suddenly understood. Everything today. The tattoo, the photograph, the threat against Lily, the sniper, none of it had been random. They'd been testing Keanu, learning whether he was still the same man he had been 20 years ago. Richard stepped beside him. What now? Keanu looked outside once more. They've finished testing. What does that mean? It means... He looked toward the road. Their leader is about to arrive. Almost as if summoned, a long black limousine rolled silently into the parking lot. Not fast, not dramatic, just smooth, deliberate. The 5 men outside immediately stood at attention. Interesting, not respect, discipline. The limousine stopped directly in front of the diner. Nobody got out. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the rear passenger door slowly opened. A polished black cane appeared first. Then an elderly man stepped onto the pavement. Nearly 70. White hair, perfectly tailored black suit. Despite the cane, his posture was flawless. He slowly removed a pair of dark gloves, looked through the broken diner window, directly at Keanu, then smiled. Keanu's expression changed. Not fear, not anger, recognition. Marcus looked at him. You know him? Keanu answered quietly. I buried him. Silence filled the diner. Richard turned pale. No. The elderly man tipped his hat politely toward Keanu, then spoke loudly enough for everyone inside to hear. Good afternoon, Phoenix. He smiled wider. I've waited 20 years to thank the man who failed to kill me. The diner fell into complete silence. Marcus looked at Keanu. You know him? Keanu never took his eyes off the man outside. His name, a long pause, is Victor Volkov. Richard Sterling's face turned pale. No, that's impossible. Victoria looked between them. Who's Victor Volkov? Richard answered quietly. The reason Phoenix Unit was created. Outside, Volkov rested both hands on the silver head of his cane. He looked almost harmless, an old man enjoying a quiet afternoon. Interesting, Marcus noticed something. None of the men around him ever looked away. Not once. They watched him, waiting for the smallest gesture. Volkov smiled through the broken window. "I've grown older. So have you," Keanu answered calmly. "Older, not wiser," Volkov chuckled, still speaking before thinking. Keanu shook his head. "No, I've spent 20 years thinking." Marcus leaned closer. "You really tried to kill him?" Keanu answered without looking away. "No, I was sent to arrest him." Silence. He made sure that became impossible. Volkov slowly nodded. "History," he looked toward everyone inside the diner, "is always rewritten by survivors." Richard stepped forward. "You murdered dozens of people." Volkov smiled. "Business competitors. You bombed an embassy. A misunderstanding. You ordered the execution of judges. They were corrupt." Richard clenched his fists. "You started a civil war." Volkov shrugged. "It was profitable." The diner became eerily quiet. Even Victoria stopped speaking. For the first time, she understood. The man outside wasn't a gangster. He wasn't a businessman. He wasn't even a terrorist. He was something much worse. A man who treated human lives like numbers in an accounting book. Volkov looked back at Keanu. "You know, I always admired you." Keanu didn't respond. "You never hated. You simply completed missions." Interesting. Marcus noticed Keanu's jaw tighten. Only slightly. The first crack in his calm. Volkov continued. "Do you remember Prague?" Keanu answered immediately. "Yes." "Belgrade?" "Yes." "Helsinki?" "Yes." A smile spread across Volkov's face. "But do you remember Warsaw?" For the first time, Keanu hesitated. Interesting. Volkov noticed it. "I thought so." He slowly tapped his cane against the pavement. "Once, twice, 3 times. You remember every mission. Except one." A memory flashed through Keanu's mind. Rained, an abandoned train station. A little girl crying. Gunfire. Then, nothing. The memory ended. Keanu frowned. "What happened?" Volkov smiled. "I was hoping you'd tell me." Richard looked confused. "What is he talking about?" Volkov answered, without taking his eyes off Keanu. "The only mission Phoenix unit failed." Marcus whispered, "You failed." Keanu remained silent. Interesting. He had no memory of failing. Volkov slowly reached inside his coat. Richard's security team immediately raised their weapons. Volkov ignored them. Instead, he removed an old photograph. He held it up against the diner window. Keanu stepped closer. The picture was faded, taken inside a train station. Smoke everywhere, bodies on the ground. In the center, a younger Keanu carried a little girl in his arms. Behind him, a man stood smiling at the camera. "Volkov." Keanu stared at the photograph. "I remember saving her." Volkov nodded. "You did." Silence. "You just forgot." "What happened afterward?" The room remained silent. Volkov's smile slowly faded. She was my daughter. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. Marcus looked at Keanu, then at Volkov. You. He couldn't finish the sentence. Volkov nodded. You rescued my daughter from men I had hired. Richard looked horrified. What? Volkov answered calmly. I wanted leverage. Silence. They misunderstood my instructions. They tried to kill her. So, he looked at Keanu. My enemy saved my child. Victoria whispered. My God. Keanu's memories slowly began returning. Not all at once. Fragments. The little girl refusing to let go of his hand. Volkov arriving too late. Looking at Keanu. Then saying, one day I'll repay this debt. Keanu quietly closed his eyes. I remember. Volkov smiled. I knew you would. Marcus frowned. If he owes you his daughter's life, why is he here? Volkov answered himself. Because debts. He looked directly at Keanu. Must eventually be settled. Richard stepped forward. If you wanted revenge, you would have attacked years ago. Volkov nodded. Correct. I didn't come for revenge. Then why? Volkov's expression became serious. For the first time, there is someone coming. Silence. Someone neither Phoenix nor XIV could ever stop. Everyone looked confused. Even Keanu. Volkov slowly opened his coat, not to reveal a weapon. A medical folder. He tossed it through the broken diner window. It landed at Keanu's feet. Keanu picked it up, opened it. Inside, medical scans, blood reports, photographs. One name, Lily Reeves. Keanu's heart stopped. He looked up. Volkov quietly spoke. Your daughter has been watched since the day she was born. The room instantly became silent. Keanu's voice was barely a whisper. Why? Volkov looked toward the horizon. Not at the diner. Not at his men. Almost as if he feared someone else. Then he answered with the one sentence that made even his own bodyguards exchange nervous glances. Because she isn't the target. A long pause. She's the key. The diner became deathly quiet. Keanu's expression didn't change. Only his eyes. Marcus noticed it immediately. Interesting. This wasn't the face of a man preparing for a fight. It was the face of a father hearing something no parent should ever hear. Keanu looked down at the medical folder. Every page carried Lily's name. School checkups, hospital visits, vaccination records, even photographs of her first day of school. Someone had watched her. For years. Richard Sterling stepped closer. How did they get these? Volkov answered honestly. I didn't. He pointed toward the folder. They did. Keanu slowly looked up. Who? Volkov remained silent for several seconds. Then, the directorate. Marcus frowned. I've never heard of them. You weren't supposed to. Volkov replied. They don't exist. Keanu quietly closed the folder. I spent 20 years making sure they never found my family. Volkov nodded. You succeeded. Another pause. Until today. Victoria whispered. This is all because of me. Keanu looked at her. No. She stared at him. I humiliated you. You revealed me. Silence. But you didn't create this. For the first time that day, Victoria began to cry. Not from fear, from guilt. Mrs. Parker stepped out of the kitchen, holding Lily's hand. The little girl looked around the silent diner. "Dad," she noticed the tears. "Did I do something wrong?" Keanu immediately knelt beside her. He smiled, the same warm smile she'd always known. "No, you did everything right." She hugged him tightly. "I don't like these people." Keanu gently kissed the top of her head. "I don't either." Volkov quietly watched. Interesting, there wasn't a trace of mockery in his face, only regret. He looked at Keanu. "When you saved my daughter, I promised I'd repay the debt." Keanu stood. "You just have." Volkov frowned. "What? You warned me." Volkov smiled faintly. "No, I delayed them." Silence. "They're still coming." Richard looked toward the highway. "What exactly is the directorate?" Volkov answered without hesitation. "The people who financed every organization. Phoenix, XIV, my network." Another pause. "We all believed we were independent. We weren't." Marcus slowly lowered his head. "So everyone was working for the same people." Volkov nodded, without realizing it. Interesting. Keanu finally understood why Phoenix Unit had disappeared, why XIV had hunted them, why every loose end eventually led nowhere. They'd all been pieces on someone else's board. A black envelope suddenly slid beneath the diner's front door. Everyone looked down. No one had approached. No one had knocked. It was simply there. Marcus carefully picked it up. No address, no stamp, only one word: Phoenix. He handed it to Keanu. Inside, a single sheet of black paper, silver lettering, no signature, just one sentence: "Thank you for confirming your location." The room fell silent. Richard immediately looked outside. The limousine was gone. The black van, gone. The 5 men with the XIV tattoos, gone. Not one vehicle remained, almost as if they'd never been there. Marcus rushed outside. The parking lot was empty. Only tire marks remained on the wet pavement. He slowly walked back inside. They disappeared. Volkov nodded. They were never here to fight. What were they here for? Confirmation. Keanu folded the letter, placed it inside his jacket, then looked at Volkov. "What now?" Volkov answered quietly. "You disappear." Keanu shook his head. "I've spent 20 years disappearing." He looked toward Lily. "I'm done running." Richard smiled. "I thought you might say that." He reached into his inside pocket, removed a business card. Not for a company, just a phone number. "If you ever need help." "Call." Keanu looked at it, then slipped it into his wallet. Marcus picked up his old suit jacket. "What about me?" Keanu smiled. "What about you?" "I don't have a job anymore." Mrs. Parker laughed from behind the counter. "I've been looking for someone to fix my broken delivery van." The diner chuckled. Marcus smiled for the first time all day. "I think I'd rather work here." Victoria slowly approached Keanu. "I don't expect forgiveness." Keanu nodded. "You shouldn't." She lowered her eyes. "But I will spend the rest of my life earning the chance." Keanu looked at Lily. then back at Victoria. Start by remembering. He paused. The next person you look down on could be carrying a burden you'll never understand. Victoria nodded silently. 1 month later, Harrington Global announced a new scholarship fund for struggling single parents. It wasn't enough to erase what happened, but it was a beginning. Marcus became head of security for the scholarship program. Mrs. Parker finally retired after Marcus insisted on buying the diner. He refused to change its name. Every Saturday morning, Keanu and Lily still sat in booth 7. Pancakes, hot chocolate, coffee, the same booth where everything had changed. Only now, the people in the diner greeted them like family. Sometimes, Keanu would catch himself looking through the front window, not because he was afraid. Old habits simply never disappeared completely. Lily noticed one morning. "Dad," he looked at her, "are you waiting for bad people?" Keanu smiled. "No, what are you waiting for?" He looked out at the quiet street, then back at his daughter. "The day." He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You grow up in a world where fathers don't have to." Outside, life carried on. Cars passed. People laughed. The morning sun shone through the diner's windows. And for the first time in a long time, Keanu wasn't remembered as a legend, or a soldier, or a ghost. He was exactly what he wanted to be. A father